all the elected officials, including Republican colleagues, all state that this is a manufactured crisis and a crisis that manufactured by the Trump administration.
This is a manufactured crisis.
This whole thing is absurd. It is a completely manufactured, appeal to the ugliest sentiments. And frankly, I wonder about our complicity in just talking about this.
Wouldn't we be there because it was a crisis? They were being overrun.
Yeah.
There's something manufactured about this.
Yeah.
He's taking 800,000 federal employees hostage so he can get his vanity wall. So he's created this crisis. It's a manufactured crisis.
This is a manufactured crisis. At the heart of this whole thing are a whole bunch of lies.
It's complete and utter nonsense trying to solve a problem that in fact doesn't exist because there's zero net illegal immigration coming across the southern border.
He's determined to convince you there is a crisis at the border. They're playing the public, you, for suckers.
Not only our Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I think we can be most proud of. So there's a second thing in that black box. An unrelenting stream of immigration, nonstop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America, from then and on, will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
You'll be announcing that we're calling the 38 electoral votes of Texas for the Democratic nominee for president. It's changing. It's going to become a purple state and then a blue state because of the demographics, because of the population growth.
It seems harder and harder to ignore that the echoes of replacement theory and other racially motivated views are increasingly coming out into the open.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority of the generation at some point.
In 2044, everyone is going to be a minority.
As the demographics change, as white people become the minority in the country, which is coming.
Demographics is destiny. Demographics is destiny.
Whites will not be the majority. I mean, it's an exciting transformation of the country. It's an exciting evolution and progress of our country in many different ways.
The white population is declining. It was always on the upswing. So that speaks to the beautiful diversity of America. It speaks to how that population the demographics will weigh in politically.
I believe anybody who echoes a replacement is to blame, not for this particular crime, but it's for no purpose except profit and or political benefit.
United Nations programs throughout Latin America, and even operating in the United States with the help of NGOs, are running the immigration crisis. This includes direct payments being made to illegal aliens and asylum seekers in the form of debit cards and even envelopes of cash. And the money for this is coming heavily from American taxpayers. Hey, Todd Bensman, thanks for being back on Crossroads.
Great to be here.
Well, Todd, you did a new book on the U.S.-Mexico border crisis, Overrun, and great work on it, by the way. You talk about something actually I've been talking about too, but you give a lot more detail on it, which is that the United Nations is paying illegal aliens to come to the United States. Tell us about this. I mean, how is the United Nations paying people to come here?
Well, it is true that the United Nations is very hands-on involved on the migrant trails all the way down into South America, straight up to the Texas border, all along the Texas border, in a number of ways. And in the most visible way is that they are showering the immigrants, the U.S.-bound immigrants, with cash in the form of debit cards, and you can ask them, the immigrants, to show you their debit cards, their UN cards. They'll pull them right out for you. It's, they get monthly stipends that are put on there every month, every 2 weeks.
How much money, roughly?
It depends. It's pegged to local cost of living. So if they're up near the Texas border, I found cards up there that were getting close to $400 every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So $800 a month. And in southern Mexico, like in Tapachula, down there on the Guatemala border, it's a little cheaper to live. And so it's like, more like a couple thousand pesos. Just a month or so ago, I was in Monterrey, Mexico, and found, the debit cards there, and they were, 2,800 pesos a month, which is like $120 or something. But the point is that this is a sustainability program. It's a program where the United Nations is making sure that people are able to stay the course, and that maybe when they're contemplating making the journey, and they're not sure they have enough money, they know in the back of their minds that they'll kind of be okay. So they'll pull the trigger because the UN will likely hand them cash or in these debit cards. But it's not just the debit cards. They also are providing vouchers for long-range transportation. They're paying the bus fares, the bus tickets, and also for lodging in youth hostels or hostels and in hotels all along the way. When you take it all together, they have all of the basic necessities of life on the road to the U.S. And that is a real deal. I know there's been some challenge about that, but there is a budget out that is in a public realm where the United Nations says in 2023 they plan to spend $450 million on cash-based assistance programs or cash-based intervention programs, CBI, and they just lay it out exactly what it's for, all three of those categories that I just told you.
Wow, geez.
And
I know you
one other thing
go
I should mention that this is U.S. taxpayer funded.
So that money's come from Americans.
Yes, the majority of it, yes.
Jeez. So I actually found some of the same things when I was down at the U.S.-Mexico border. From what I saw, it was the United Nations bankrolling a lot of it. Is that what you're seeing as well? It was through the State Department bankrolling a lot of it. Do you also see it's the State Department bankrolling it through the UN?
Yes, that's one of the major sources. There's a division of the State Department that's doing that, but the United Nations is a multi-headed hydra, and so is the United States and its funding mechanisms. So there's money coming from all different places. From the Congress, from different parts of the executive branch, and it's really hard to figure out and untangle. I still have not been able to untangle, and neither have certain congressional offices that are working pretty hard on this right now. There's a lot of outrage, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, that U.S. taxpayer money is going to support, aid, and abet this sort of travel activity, smuggling activity, if you will, to sustain people on the way.
What I hope is a simple question. Do we need to have more or fewer people coming to our southern border?
Senator, we are working on diminishing the number of people whom we encounter at our southern border because of the challenge it presents. We're trying to build lawful, safe, and orderly pathways to accomplish that.
Okay, fewer. So we need to have fewer, which means we need to roll back incentives to come. So I would have thought that would have been the answer. Let's talk about what you're doing, though. In January of this year, you rolled out a new phone app called CBP One, an app for a cell phone. I've got a picture of it behind me here. This phone app allows, and I'm going to quote from your own fact sheet, it allows, and I quote, non-citizens without appropriate documents for admission to schedule an appointment to come to the border. They can now go on their phone and schedule a time to come to the border and then be admitted. And you identified 7 separate border points of entry where they could come. 5 of them in Texas, 2 of them in California, 1 in Arizona. It's like a concierge service for illegal immigrants. My question is, you didn't think the border crisis was bad enough that now we're going to have an app that allows illegals to schedule their appointments and come and be admitted to this country?
Senator, you're mischaracterizing the use of the application. Let me explain it to you. We are currently enforcing the public health order of Title 42, and I know you're very familiar with it. There is a process for individuals who claim an exception to the Title 42 expulsion authority because of an acute medical condition.
Well, let's talk about this app.
If I may finish, an urgent humanitarian reason. So instead of them coming in between the ports of entry to claim that urgent medical condition, that extraordinarily acute humanitarian cause, we allow a limited number to arrive at our ports of entry and seek the emergency relief that they need.
Schedule you allow them. Let's be particular about what you do.
I should say that the CBP One app was not unveiled for the first time on January 5th of this year.
Oh no, but you changed it. You made it available on January 5th to the illegals themselves. You don't have to be a lawyer to use it. You don't have to be a member of a non-governmental organization. Anybody can download the app and use it on their phone. And for the first time, you allowed them to schedule appointments. Now let's talk about what actually happens when they come to the border. It's interesting. You characterized this when you rolled it out as an application for applying for asylum, but nowhere on the app do you actually require the illegal migrants to apply for asylum or to claim asylum or anything about asylum. And in fact, when they then get to the border, you don't ask them questions, you don't do interviews, you just release them. Here's the Texas Monthly, not a notable conservative outlet, who reports, and I quote, "At no point does the app ask users, are you seeking asylum? Those arriving for the CBP One appointments are given no interviews, asked no questions about vulnerabilities that they may or may not have listed in the app or about why they're coming to the United States. They're simply released into the country," end quote. So rather than building a wall, Mr. Secretary, you have built Ticketmaster for illegal immigrants.
You are, Senator, you are conflating programs. Let me explain to you.
Just respond to this. Is it true that they are given no interviews, asked no questions, and simply released into the country?
Let me explain to you what we announced on January 5th.
No, I want you to explain to me what's happening. I know what you announced. I read it to you.
So I will explain to you what is happening.
Are they given interviews? Let's start with that. Are they given interviews?
We were previously experiencing
That's starting to sound like a no. Well, let's just hone in here. Mr. Secretary, my time is very limited. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to drive to some clarity here. The Texas Monthly has reported that once illegal immigrants go on their phone and reserve their time to come to the border, once they use your concierge service that you've created for them, when they come, they are given no interviews. They are asked no questions about any vulnerabilities. They are simply released into the country. Is that happening?
Senator, you are mistaken. And if I may explain.
Are they given interviews?
If I may explain, individuals who seek parole under our January 5th program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans are screened and vetted before they arrive at our border.
Wait a minute. No, they go on the phone and they just reserve a time, and then they show up and they're given nothing. Listen to this. Even immigration advocates are amazed about this. Here, also from the Texas Monthly. Here's one immigration advocate whose first name is Orta. She says, that's the crazy part. Nothing in this new program requires you to actually seek asylum. Somehow, we've decided to punish those who arrive at the border without the app, who may be seeking asylum, but we just let in anybody who may or may not have any particular reason to seek asylum, so long as they've made an appointment on your Ticketmaster app. This seems crazy to me.